So welcome everyone. We're going to get started now. Today, the LWV Greenwich is delighted to offer you the next in its Community Conversation series, featuring the leaders of key town departments to explain their work and how it impacts the lives of Greenwich residents. I'm Janet Stone McWigan, a longstanding supporter of the LWV Greenwich and a member of its fantastic programming committee. Together with Chris Lowe, one of the co-chairs of our programming committee, we will serve as the moderators of today's program. The LWV Greenwich occupies an ideal position as a nonpartisan civic organization to host these conversations. The LWV Greenwich works to empower voters. We seek a democracy where every citizen has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the ability to participate. As I'm sure everyone on this Zoom is aware, the town of Greenwich recently completed a mandatory townwide revaluation for the grand list, with new property values to be reflected on tax bills as of July 1st, 2026. So we're really honored to have David Weisbrod and Lauren Elliott with us for this hour. David Weisbrod is serving in his 5th term on the Greenwich Board of Estimate and Taxation and is currently chair. He previously served on the town's Zoning Board of Appeals, where he was also elected chair. David worked at J.P. Morgan for 40 years, retiring as vice chairman in 2013. He also served as CEO of LCH ClearNet LLC, a financial derivatives clearinghouse. Lauren Elliott serves as the assessor for the town of Greenwich, with over 40 years of experience in the assessment field. She's been affiliated for over 8 years with the law firm of Fitzgerald, O'Brien, and Robin. Ms. Elliott served as director of the New England office for a national tax firm, responsible for real estate and personal property tax appeals for the Northeast region, Maine to Maryland. She has testified as an expert for both the Connecticut and New Hampshire Attorney Generals. She is a graduate of Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, completed her JD at Western New England School of Law, and has an LLM in estate tax planning and elder law, and is a member of the Massachusetts Bar. David and Laura will begin by telling us more about the BET, the Assessor's Office, why Greenwich is doing a revaluation, and the roles the BET and the Assessor's Office play in the revaluation. We will then continue in a Q&A format. You can type your questions into the Q&A field on the Zoom, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible in the hope this session really reflects the issues and concerns that are top of mind to you. Please understand that we may not be able to get to every question, and if some questions are similar, we will do our best to consolidate them. If we don't get to your question, David and Lauren have offered that you may reach out to them directly. david.weisbrod.bet@greenwichct.gov and lauren.elliott@greenwichct.gov. This program is being recorded and will be posted on the LWV Greenwich website. And with that, I'm pleased to hand the virtual mic over to David and Lauren.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you so much, Chris. And thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this extremely important session. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm especially pleased to be here with my colleague, Lauren Elliott, who is the maestra of assessment, well respected throughout the state of Connecticut. She really is the one who knows this subject very, very well. So I'll kick it off and then I'll hand it over to Lauren. The BET is the town's chief financial body. We serve to create the budget for all of the operating expenses for the town, as well as the capital items, which we can talk about. And then we set the mill rate. The mill rate is the property tax rate that is used to, which is applied to the grand list that Lauren will go into, which determines the aggregate property taxes that are paid by citizens, residents throughout the town of Greenwich. We also make sure that the financial affairs of the town are managed effectively and that the fiscal policies are good. We approve interim appropriation requests when they come up. For example, most recently, an interim request for the Central Middle School. And we appoint the controller and the assessor. So Lauren is an appointee of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. She serves a 2-year term. The assessor reports to the BET, but she's independent. We have no role in second guessing or challenging the individual valuations that she and her office come up with, and she'll explain how those can be challenged. And I'll then just talk a little bit about why a revaluation is necessary before I do turn it over to Lauren. Simply stated, the law requires it. State law requires that property be revalued once every 5 years. And the reason for that is fairness and equity. Real estate values change, the market moves, and therefore we want to make sure that the valuations attributed to individual homeowners are current as we can make them. It's not a revenue generator. We don't do the revaluations to get more money. The goal is simply to distribute the tax burden fairly among all the residents in the town. The current revaluation was done effective October 1st, 2025. The previous one was done in 2021. The reason it was only 4 years is because of COVID, which necessitated a 1-year delay. And the next one will be done 5 years from 10/1/25 or October 1st, 2030. With that, I will, with joy, turn it over to Lauren, who will get into the really interesting parts of the whole matter.
Okay. So the assessor's offices in the state of Connecticut are responsible for assessing all real estate, all motor vehicles, and business personal property. That's what makes up our grand list. And every year I create a grand list, and every 5 years the town has to do an evaluation. In the town of Greenwich, you have roughly 20,000 residential parcels, and you have roughly about 1,100 commercial parcels. And the majority of your value, 82% or so, is in your residential parcels. The commercial roughly is 12 to 13% of the total value of your real estate. Overall, you have a value, if you add up all the lists, the real estate, the motor vehicle, and the personal property, you have 100% value of $66 billion worth of property here in the town of Greenwich. And my office is responsible for valuing that on an annual basis, keeping up with all your motor vehicles and all the personal property, and then revaluing the real estate every 5 years as required by statute. So I'm sure everybody knows that the town of Greenwich just did a revaluation. It shouldn't be news to anybody at this point. How we actually come up and how the revaluation is completed, it started by, we actually hire a revaluation company. It's a company that is certified by the Office of Policy and Management. They are regulated by statute, so all the companies have to be certified. We hire a company and they come in and they basically put our assessments up to 70% of fair market value. In the state of Connecticut, everything is assessed at 70% of fair market value. And basically what the revaluation does is to create equity again to values from property to property. My office is responsible for maintaining the property record cards. Every piece of real estate has a property record card, and my office over the years continually updates those cards depending upon any building permits, any additions or subtractions. And we also do inspections. Now, we're required by law to inspect every property once every 10 years. We could do it all at once, and the last time we did it, the town did it back in 2001. It cost the town millions of dollars to do it. So what we do is we spread that inspection requirement over the 10 years. so that every once in a while, we do about 2,000 to 3,000 parcels a year that we go knock on the doors. We walk around. We're required to knock on the door. If we can, we'll measure the outside, and if possible, get into the interior and collect all the pertinent data that our property record cards are required. So we have maintained those property record cards and all the data. And so when we do a revaluation, the revaluation company takes our data and they basically come up with the fair market values of all the property in here in town.
So thank you so much. As you can imagine, we got a lot of questions that were really focused on the mechanics of how the revaluation was completed, which I know you just touched on. But then we have, some more specifics, like, were drones used in this revaluation?
At this point, the statutes require us to actually enter the property. An inspection is actually to walk around and physically measure the property. We don't use drones at this point in time. However, technology is coming forward so that we could actually start doing some of this measuring either by satellite and by overlays. That's coming. We also have to wait for the statute and the regulations to actually catch up to technology. And I think that will probably happen in the next year or two. But no, we don't use drones. We do have a good GIS department here, so we do use our GIS maps and what have you to make sure that we've gotten all the particulars on each property. But yeah, we don't have any drones yet.
Chris, you're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to keep quiet while you were talking. Could you talk a little bit about the criteria that you're using to determine the value of a piece of property when inspectors go out and they're looking at the home and measuring the home? What are they seeking to understand? What are they looking at?
So when we go out, this is what we call a mass appraisal. So when we go out, we collect various property characteristics. The most important thing is the size of the lot, the square footage of the house. We basically measure all the other improvements, pools, garages, all those add value. And then on the interior, we look to see the quality of construction. We look to see the number of bathrooms, fireplaces. And basically, if you ever looked at a property record card, there's numerous amounts of data that we collect. And we all keep that in the way we process all of this is what we call a CAMA system. It's a computerized mass appraisal system. And so that's where, if anybody ever came into my office and they got a copy of the property record card, all of that data is there that we collect. And that data is what we hand over to the revaluation companies to determine and come up with fair market values for our October 1st assessment date. How the revaluation companies do that is we look at all the sales that occurred, all arm's length transactions that occurred since the last revaluation. But we put emphasis on the last sales from October 1st, 2024 to October 1st, 2025. And those sales are very important because that's where the Office of Policy and Management requires us to make sure we meet these statistical standards. And I have to make sure that all the assessments are relative to each other and that they actually, within a certain percentage, reflect fair market value as of that October 1st, 2025 date. And that's what the revaluation companies do.
So just by way of follow-up, here's an example of a submitted question was, homes in Greenwich are selling quickly and at high prices, which often reflect major upgrades, such as brand new interiors. How will my property value be determined when no improvements have been made and my home does not include the amenities that these recently sold homes have?
So with all recent sales, we have the ability to look at the interiors and whatever from MLS and various other stuff at realtor.com, and all of this is on the internet. What we do to make that distinction, so we try to keep up to date with people who pull building permits and do those renovations. There's a couple of things in our property record cards that we keep track of, and that's what we call the effective year. So if you've never actually updated your house, your effective year would still be the date of the year that the house was built. However, if there's been major renovations done since that time, we then change the effective year to correlate to the year in which the renovations were done. And there's also another component of that, which is condition. So we do make the distinction between those houses that have not been updated and those houses that have been updated. And that is it. And it's quite clear from the market over the last year or two that new is definitely anything that's been redone and new matters. It's selling quickly if you've updated your kitchens and baths.
And just a follow-up question to that, sorry, are photographs taken when an inspection is done, coming back to the mechanics of it, when inspections, are you taking photographs to
Yes.
justify?
We take photographs of the exteriors. We do not take photographs and publish them for the interiors. We may take some interior photographs if need be, but no, for the most part, we take exterior photos. But my appraisers go in. They have the ability to say, okay, this has been updated or not. They have the ability. They're very well trained to determine, the overall condition based upon the effective year and the age of the dwelling.
Great, thank you. Can you review the relationship between the grand list, the budget, and the mill rate?
So let's do this. The grand list is the aggregate value of all properties in the town. And it's calculated, as Lauren just said, as 70% of the market value as determined by the assessment. We include residential homes, commercial properties, we include motor vehicles, and a category called personal, which are office equipment and business-related assets. That's the grand list. The budget is the financial roadmap for the whole town. Itemizes all the revenues that we're expecting, all of the operating costs to run the town, salaries, benefits, and so forth. And then the capital budget, which is the longer term assets like building a school or building a rink and so forth. All of those are incorporated in what we call the budget. And then the mill rate is the tax rate that we calculate to figure out the property taxes that people are charged. And so here's how it works. In this year's, in the fiscal year 27, the expenses of the town, the budget aggregates $542 million. But we subtract from that $542 million sources of funds that do not come from taxpayers. And that includes 22 million of fund balances that we have that we use, some money from state and federal aid, some transfers from other funds, and then 40 million plus in other sources like building permits, conveyance taxes, the tipping fees at Holly Hill, and so on, interest that we make on investments. When you take out those items, we have a $468 million balance. That's the number that needs to be funded by the property tax. And so when you divide the grand list by the amount needed to fund the $468 million, you come up with, lo and behold, the mill rate, which we just voted on Monday of this week, we the VET, and the new mill rate is 10.125. So also, I should point out, those people who live in the sewer districts have their own additional mill rates to pay for sewer maintenance and for sewer improvements. That's the way it works.
Got it. So one of the follow-up questions takes me back to my son's math superstars days. It's a word problem. Let's see if I get this right. The assessor's report indicates that the average residential valuation increased by 28.75%, even though the mill rate declined from 12.041 to 10.124. It didn't decline enough to offset the increase in value, resulting in an average 8.25% increase in property taxes. Is this correct?
Not quite. It's close, but not quite correct. So I have to just correct it. So while the average residential home increased by 28.5% via the assessment, the grand list on average increased by 25.3, the whole grand list, including motor vehicles, commercial, and the other items. So if you take a home that was valued, let's say, at $1 million, pre-reval, and you apply the old mill rate of 12.041, you come up with a tax of $12,041. Now, if that $1 million home if you apply the 25.36% increase in the average grand list to the pro rata increase to the home, that home would be worth $1,250,000. And when you apply the new mill rate to that new valuation, you come up with a new property tax of $12,686, which is an increase of 5.4%, not the 8% of the model that or the example that you gave. Now, the reason for that, the reason that the town's expenses went up only 4%, but the property taxes for this individual go up 5.4%, is because there's a slightly higher percentage of the budget being funded by the property tax this year than last year. And the main reason for that is that we use less of the fund balance this year than we did last year. And therefore, since we're not generating the money to pay the town's expenses from other sources, it gets charged through the property tax. That's the difference. So, and I'll just add, there's been a misconception that if you have a 25% increase in your property value, that would indicate a 25% increase in taxes. No, that is not the case. When the grand list increases significantly due to a reval, which we had this year, it's pretty much the case that automatically the mill rate goes down. And so the offset tends to, the difference tends to offset itself. As a general rule of thumb, if your assessment increased by greater than the 25%, all things being equal, you'd have a proportionally higher increase in your property tax than if your assessment increased by less than the average of 25%. So that's sort of it. And I'm sure I confused absolutely everybody, but that's how it really works. And I'm sure I'll get emails, and I welcome them. Send them to Laura. No. We'll do our best.
You actually, no, you got, I understood. But a point of information. So, we're talking about commercial properties, we're talking residential properties, we're talking motor vehicles. And then you said other personal properties. Are those boats? Like what constitutes other personal properties?
Personal property refers to business personal property. So that is a tax here. So your office equipment, tables, desks, furniture, fixtures, any business in town has a requirement to pay personal property tax.
Okay.
But it's a small component. It doesn't drive the grand list, but it's there.
Did you find that property valuations increase in some areas of town more than others? Will property tax increases differ from district to district? Do condos, single family homes, and townhouses, have, different changes in their valuations, so forth?
Yes, and yes. So basically what the assessments are trying to follow what the real estate market is doing. Mm-hmm. And the real estate market is appreciating quite substantially since the last revaluation. And your average sale price in 2021 was $1.9 million. Now your average sale price, or your median sale price, is almost $2.5 million. And that's just averages. But there's definitely certain parts of town that have increased in value more so than others. And that's when we do the revaluation. That's why we try to do them more often than not, to make those tax shifts less noticeable. The problem with part of the impact this time is the last two revals, we didn't increase the grand list that much. They went up it went up maybe 5%. So in 2015 and 2021, we didn't have the total impact of COVID yet. And the overall grand list only increased about 5% plus or minus. This time we had significant increases in real estate, and more so on the residential side. We still increased the commercial properties around 17, 18%. But not as much, their values have not increased as much as residential. So there is always going to be a bit of a tax shift based upon what the real estate market is doing.
Got it. And
yeah, I mean, you can
go
say
ahead.
some of the districts where we have had a disproportionate increase were District 1, 37.7%, District 2, I hope I'm getting the numbers right, but Lauren will tell me, District 2, 30.6%, District 8, 30.7%. So those three districts in particular did increase at a faster rate than did other districts. So it is, it does vary depending on where the home is, which is logical.
On it. And before I ask the next question, there was a question. Do condos, single family homes, and townhouses have different mill rates?
No.
Okay, so it's all
there's one mill rate, and there's one mill rate only, which is 10.125, unless you're in the sewer districts, which, well, they also get the 10.125, but then they get two other mill rates for the sewer maintenance and the sewer improvement funds, but they're smaller, much smaller.
Got it. So our next question is, could you explain the appeals process and share what relief programs are available to Greenwich taxpayers?
So this grand list is as of October 1st, 2025, and I signed the grand list at the end of January. And once I sign the grand list, the Board of Assessment Appeals takes their appeals. You're allowed to file an appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals. The appeal window is from February 1st to February 20th. And the Board of Assessment Appeals then hears those all hearings, all residential hearings, in the month of March. The appeal process for this year is concluded with the Board of Assessment Appeals. But certainly if anybody's still upset about their assessment, they can come again next year. You can appeal anytime and any year. If you go to the Board of Assessment Appeals and you're not satisfied with the reduction or whatever the result of from your hearing, you're allowed to then appeal to the Superior Court.
It's an appeal, no.
So you're allowed to appeal to Superior Court within 2 months of the decision from the Board of Assessment Appeals. As far as tax relief program, there are some from the state as well as a local senior and disabled property tax benefit here in the town. The application period is February 1st through May 15th, and that's so all our seniors who are on a limited income below $80,000 are allowed to come and get a benefit. In addition to what the town provides, the state also provides a tax relief, but that's capped at about $45,000 of income. In addition to that, and if there's any veterans out there, if you served, you are entitled to a veterans exemption. And there's also a new statute for any 100% disabled veteran. And those application periods are by October 1st.
Thank you. And then some follow-up questions. Has the town of Greenwich ever considered a homestead exemption for permanent residents of Greenwich?
That's something that would have to be taken up by your RTM legislative. You'd have to create an ordinance. There is a provision out there that state statutes allows you to create such an ordinance, but it would have to go through that process.
Got it. And then what proportion of residential properties challenge the assigned evaluation? And can the appeals process backfire and result in a higher tax amount?
It can. The Board of Assessment Appeals actually has the authority to lower or raise your assessment. I don't believe that they normally, on occasion, I think they have. And what was the other question?
What percentage of residential
Oh,
properties challenge the
that's,
assigned?
we had about 950 or so appeals to the Board of Assessment Appeals. So out of the 20,000 parcels, we had about 900 that went to the Board of Assessment Appeals.
Okay. We have a question of what percentage of the 66 billion value of property is owned by non-permanent residents of Greenwich?
I have no idea. I wouldn't even, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so here's another question too. The requirement for the appraiser is to enter a home. However, if not allowed access, how do they determine the condition? Is the diagram on the tax card from the inside if not allowed access, or if allowed access, or always from the outside by a formula used to calculate this?
So we always measure exterior measurements. Our property record card is the exterior measurements. And we've had those on file here for years. So that's how we calculate the overall square footage of a home is from the exterior measurements. So we don't need to get inside to determine what the overall square footage is. And we do it from the exterior for that reason, so that we treat everybody the same. Everybody's measured up from the exterior.
And another follow-up, after a meeting with the Board of Assessment Appeals to lower the assessment, so what the question is saying is if the appeal was successful, who actually makes the new assessment?
Well, it's the Board of Assessment Appeals tells us what the new value should be.
Oh, okay, so they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do.
And of course, people should know Board of Assessment and Appeals are elected officials. So, and they're like any other elected official, they're elected by the people.
Got it. And we have a very specific question. How would Invita GPUs be taxed by the town of Greenwich?
What?
So that would be, that's business equipment, right? And Invita I believe.
Yeah, okay. So personal property evaluate we send out a personal property declaration to all the businesses every year and it's due back by November 1st. So it is the responsibility of the business owner to declare to us what the value of that is, and to also because we base it upon the acquisition year and then less depreciation. So it's basically a self-declaring business tax. You have to tell us how much that you purchased that item for. If we are concerned that we don't have a legitimate declaration from a business owner, we do have the authority to audit businesses if it seems that they are underestimating their personal property.
Has the recent removal of certain tracts of property from our taxpayer rolls due to acquisitions by private schools had any substantial impact on the grand list value?
Yes, over the last few years, you've lost some significant parcels of land. So yeah, that certainly does have it does have an impact.
Got it. Are there any, digging into the details, are there any more interesting trends or facts that you found out from this revaluation, kind of how it shifted the breakdown between commercial and residential, owner occupied and rental, property, real estate property versus motor vehicle?
The only thing I would say is the residential is 84% of the grand list. So, and if you have the residential with the commercial, it's 96%. The rest of it is, you have about 2% for the motor vehicles and maybe 1% for the personal property. So it's really driven, for the most part, by the residential, which is what you'd expect given the nature of our community. I don't know that those ratios have been disproportionately different over the years. Lauren may have a better sense, but I think that mix is really, to my mind, what's driving the, and look, to the extent that we have an increase in the grand list, we It's a very good thing. It's a very good thing.
Mhm.
And it's an attempt to create fairness and equity as best as we can do it. It's not perfect, but I think we do a pretty good job, very good job.
So if I might add, town of Greenwich has one of the lowest effective tax rates in the state. I think
Now Velo.
I have to check with Salisbury. And that's very good for businesses. It's very good. I remember it was G. McLaughlin used to have a saying. It says the initiation fee here in Greenwich is high, but once you get here, the annual dues aren't so bad. So relative to property values, your taxes, your effective tax rate is less than 1%. And I don't think there's probably in the Northeast, I think there's a handful of towns that have a mill rate so low. And I think that helps keep your real estate values. I think it's part of the reason why you have such an increase in some real estate values here. The mill rate, it does have an effect as to, purchase and sales of property. Everybody's looking at how much they're going to be spending on their property taxes. The one thing I did notice about what's going on in this reevaluation was not easy because we were noticing that a lot of houses were being listed at $2.5 million and they turn around, they'd sell them for 3.2. I mean, there's still some froth in the market. There is a lot of just paying over ask. And that's harder to deal with when the real estate market is moving as quickly as it is. And I think it's also, sorry.
Well, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I related to that. How does a recent sale affect the assessed value of a property?
Well, that's what we're looking at. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make our assessments equal to 70% of fair market value. We're not at 100% of value, we're probably around 95% of value. So yes, if you have a sale price of roughly, $3 million, I have to make sure my assessments is statistically within a certain percentage of that sale price. It matters. The property tax is an ad valorem tax. It's based on value. And the most indicative of value is what it sells for. And that's why these sale prices really matter. And the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of sales and we've seen you've seen a fair amount of appreciation since the 2021 grand list.
Great, thank you. So you've done such a good job. We're starting to run out of questions. So I'm going to just take this opportunity to say, are there questions you expected us to ask or should have asked that we haven't asked that you would like to address?
The only thing I would add, I think we covered it, but I'm going to, as I thought about this, is that the process that we do for assessment is subject to supervision and oversight from the state, from OPM. So what Lauren didn't go through are the complex statistical ratios that she and her team use to ensure that the assessments are within a band of price differentials and the like. And I don't want to say compliance, but the outcome of these ratios is indeed scrutinized by the state. And if you vary off of the standard that the state imposes, you get challenged. And so we're well within all those standards, which is a testament to the professionalism of the process here and the experience that we have with Lauren. So it's a process that's near and dear to everyone's heart because it affects the asset that's in many cases the most valuable one we own. As I learn more and more about it, and the longer I serve on this BET, we're quite fortunate to have the talented people doing this work and the experience that we bring to doing it. And so that I think needs to be underscored. So I wanted to say that.
Great. Chris, are there any questions I've missed or any questions you'd like to ask?
There are just a couple of questions that have come in related to condominiums. And is there a difference in the way condominiums are valued relative to the approach to single family homes, residential properties?
No, they're assessed in the same manner. The issue being is that there's not a lot of them, and the demand for condominiums is great, and so they seem to be appreciating since the last revaluation in 2021. They've appreciated an incredible amount. So they that's where we did see a larger increase in the condo section than the regular residential section.
All right. Well, I will go to our last question then, unless someone wants to answer one last one before I go to that one. But hearing none, I'll just ask this question that was submitted. As an active member of the community, I'm aware of the recent leadership changes within the BET and have been impressed with how effectively and collaboratively the board is now operating. Given the importance of issues like property taxes and assessments to all residents, how are these matters being more broadly communicated? Additionally, how is the board's new management, hard work, and effectiveness being shared with the community?
Well, thank you. Whoever asked that question, we embrace you. This is not a role that gets much positive feedback, because what we do is we tax and spend, whatever your political outlook is. That's the nature of what the BET does. So, look, what we've tried to do in this term is run this process with civility, with respect, with engagement. And that means all 12 members of the BET, we are indifferent. I am indifferent as to whether you be Republican or Democrat. Very, very few of these issues really parallel national political issues and so forth. So we try hard to keep all of that out of the picture, which it should be. We welcome challenges within the BET. We really do welcome people on the BET and from the community asking tough questions, and we want to stay on our toes and make sure that we can answer those questions to the best of our ability. We had our budget vote, which was 12-0-0, and it isn't that there's not differences among the 12 of us. There are, and there should be. It would be not quite a democracy if everyone spoke with the same voice. The difference is we try to iron out those differences in the committees and in the internal discussions that we have, and we try not to belabor the differences in the public to the extent that we can resolve them. And if we're successful, not every vote is going to be 12-0-0, and some votes are going to be split. We had some votes at the meeting on Monday that were split, and that's fine. There's nothing at all bad about any of that. It's just how it's conducted. We really want to do a better job of communicating this approach in the communities. We started a little bit by when we addressed the RTM, when the RTM voted on the budget, and 12 of us go out and meet with each of the committees and the districts, and are there not to present a point of view, but to answer the questions that these committees on the RTM may have about the nature of the issues, the nature of the votes, and why the votes were what they are. And I'm very, very pleased that that's exactly what 12 people did. So that helps spread the word that, we all get along. We also do social gatherings, which we're introducing, of the 12 of us, because we want to see each other as neighbors, and that we're human beings, each of us with our own set of personal issues and our own personalities. And so that's very helpful in terms of the collaboration, and we're going to continue to do that. I think that's very important. So like the League, our goal is to be good neighbors, good citizens, good colleagues, to disagree respectfully. And any advice you folks can give us as to how to communicate that, it's really a civics lesson, we would really be open to. I think all 12 of us take pride in the spirit that we're bringing to this task. And so we truly would welcome any ideas as to how we can better message that in the community. And we'll do all of that as we can, because it's important, really important. So thanks, whoever asked the question. We really thank you for that question. It's very welcome. And I hope to meet that person in person so we can thank them in person. And that would be it.
Well, thank you. And absolutely, we'll happily give you our 2 cents, and to be continued. So I will just conclude, and I'll say our sincere thanks to David and Lauren for taking the time to speak with us today. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jess Reed for her technical support. You might not be able to see her, but we absolutely benefited from her being with us today. So we feel that we hope that you all feel more informed about how the recent property revaluation was done and what it might mean to you. And we hope you'll join us next Wednesday, May 27th, from 5:30 to 7:30 at Burning Tree Country Club for a report on the 2025 Connecticut legislative session with your state senator and representatives. Advanced registration is required. And stay tuned for future community conversations with town leaders. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, League.
Thank you all.
Thank you.